So when the team's designing a god, it's often a combination of choosing from the lore of the pantheon, basically research into mythology, and combining that with just really fun gameplay. So sometimes a god's origin will be the mythology, and other times it'll be a particular gameplay role that we want to fill. So it's really a combination of the both. Yeah, so in terms of a gameplay mechanic that doesn't fit the lore, we do have examples of that. The most recent goddess, Nox, who's actually coming out this week, that's an example where the team was thinking about a stealth mechanic, but really didn't find support for that in the lore and mythology, so we've got to save that for a future god or goddess. So as far as new pantheons, really throughout this year, as we've communicated, we're going to stick with the existing pantheons that we have. The team is super excited about new pantheons. We don't have a date to reveal anything yet, but in the coming years, we'll certainly be exploring other mythologies. Shinto is probably one of the most requested pantheons from the community, and again, the team's excited, but nothing to announce at this time. So in terms of a new god release, early on in the process, we were going really, really quickly because we wanted there to be enough diversity of gods and goddesses in the game. So if folks remember from closed beta, we're releasing new gods and goddesses every 2 to 3 weeks. We've now slowed down to about once a month, and we plan to continue that for the foreseeable future. So we're at just about 60 with the next god or goddess, and I expect we'll continue that once a month pace until we're over 100. So the design process for a new god or goddess is pretty intense. It's about 3 months end to end, even though we're releasing them about once a month, but we have 3 teams working in parallel. And it takes between 12 and 15 individual contributors to make any god or goddess, each one of those with a very particular specialization, from concept art through gameplay programming, through mechanics design, through modeling, rigging, texturing, visual effects, voice effects, just goes on and on. So again, about 15 individual hands are touching a god or goddess from beginning to end over the course of about 3 months. So at this point, it's important to us to make sure that we have each of the roles for all the pantheons. So we're pretty much covered in that respect with the Greek gods and goddesses. So the upcoming gods and goddesses are more in the Mayan and Chinese pantheons. After that, we'll rotate back, and we'll definitely hit some more Greek in the next 6 months or so. So yeah, there's a lot of requests for Medusa. The team's pretty excited about that concept. Sometimes there's debate around whether demigods can be included. You know, Hercules, he's only halfway there, and Medusa kind of falls in that category, but I would say she's a legit character to add to the game, so certainly under consideration. So after the World Tournament in January, there's going to be a couple of big milestones. The first one is, as we head into Season 2 of competition, we're going to look at a number of changes from the game, including a pretty major overhaul to the primary map, the Conquest map, which is used for competition. So that's big step number 1. And then big step number 2, of course, is looking at new platforms. And so we're excited that Smite's going to be coming to Xbox One springtime next year. And so we think that's going to enable a much larger audience of players to discover and hopefully enjoy Smite. So the Xbox One version will be free to play. We're pretty excited about that because that is a relatively new concept for Xbox One. But we're going to be working closely with Microsoft to make sure that's a good experience. And so, yes, the short version is it'll be free to play, and we'll have the same general payment options as we have on the PC version. For example, the Ultimate God Pack, which is a pretty good deal for MOBA, in that it gives you all playable characters for a single price for players that are interested in that sort of purchase option, and we'll plan to have that on the console as well. We're pretty excited about bringing Smite to all the consoles. We're Xbox One first. After that, we'll see. Right now, the team is mainly focused on making sure that the Xbox One controller experience is exceptional and feels really comfortable, and that's really where the focus is going to remain. Currently, there's no dev activity going to keyboard and mouse support on the console. In terms of version compatibility, we do expect that the console will be a bit behind because of certification requirements. And that, as well as the difference in controls, mean really two different independent competition forms, in our opinion. The game wouldn't really benefit from bringing them together. So the general idea is that console will have a set of competitive events which are separate from PC. In terms of VGS, it's true that on the console you have built-in voice over IP, and we expect that that will be good tactical communication with your teammates. Right now, the team is looking to implement some option for VGS on console because it's just so much fun to use. And of course, that's another cosmetic option for players who want to sound like their favorite god or goddess. We're really trying to maintain the same high level of visual fidelity that we have on the PC version as we bring it to console. So we don't expect any changes to the core gameplay. Certainly the UI is getting a lot of work to make sure that it's a good experience for the living room. We do get the question or the request for Abrahamic deities. We don't have any plans to add Jesus or Moses at this time. Honestly, the original idea was to find mythologies where there are multiple gods or goddesses represented, and also where there's a lot of battles depicted in the lore or the literature itself. So that's really our main criteria when looking at what qualifies. That means that monotheistic religions tend to not be as good a fit, but mythologies where there's a really diverse cast of characters that are actually battling one another in the original text, those are a better fit for Smite. We are planning on introducing more diverse items into the game. We know that players want diversity of builds, and as we head into Season 2, that's something that the team's going to be looking at a lot. With Smite, we really try to be both accessible to people where it's their first MOBA, but also have enough depth for the competitive players. And so over time, players will see more and more diversity of items, but also see systems like auto build, which is in the game, that lets you not have to mess with items at all when you're first starting off.